Got it. All right, well, welcome everyone. Good afternoon and welcome to Roots and Wings. We're going to have a conversation this afternoon about the needs of women and children between 3 and 5 p.m. each day. My name is Dr. Sabala Mandava Rao. I am a radiologist at Henry Ford Health System in Detroit. I am also a mother. And so this particular topic is very near and dear to me. Today's conversation about working moms and out of school time challenges, this is hosted by the Michigan Women's Commission and the Michigan Afterschool Partnership. So right now I want to introduce our panelists, our distinguished group of women who are going to be talking to us a little bit more about our topic. First of all, Danielle Atkinson. She is a commissioner with the Michigan Women's Commission, and she's also founding director of Mothering Justice and the Mothering Justice Action Fund. Welcome, Danielle. Lily Glow, she's a graduate student in clinical psychology at Michigan State University, and Erin Skeen Pratt, who is executive director at Michigan After School Partnership. So welcome everyone, and thank you for being here this afternoon. I do want to acknowledge that another panelist of ours, Charity Dean, who is also a Michigan Women's Commissioner, was unable to join us at the last minute today. And as we'll discuss, time and managing time when you have children is a really delicate balancing act. And so, again, this is a very apropos topic right now. And unfortunately, Commissioner Dean was unable to make it this afternoon. Okay, so welcome everyone. So I just want to give a little background on the Michigan Women's Commission. So this was created by a governmental statute in 1968, and it's comprised of 15 women across the state of Michigan. They have terms of 3 years. And they basically review the status of women in Michigan, and we, I should say, try to direct attention to critical problems that women across our state face. And so we know that as working moms, and when I say working moms, I know that moms work in the home a great deal. We are talking about moms today that also work outside of the home. And there is so much juggling that has to go on when you have a job outside of the home and you have children at home, particularly when they're young, but even as they get older. So this was the case even before the pandemic, but the pandemic really brought to home many more issues that came to focus. Now, moms, in addition to all of the tasks that they had to juggle beforehand, had to add things like virtual schooling, no structured care. There would be days where the kids would be in school, and then the next day the kids didn't have school and would be home. And so then, they're scrambling, trying to find childcare or help or someone to be at home. Meanwhile, still trying to juggle working from home and all of the other things that the pandemic had brought down. So it's a lot. It's been a lot for all families and particularly for working mothers. And in the state of Michigan alone, over 229,000 women have left the labor market. So, I mean, that is a staggering number when you think about it. And a lot of it is because of all of these multifactorial issues that have come into play. So we're going to talk about some of these issues and resources and what we can do to help alleviate some of these problems. Some of this is being addressed by Governor Whitmer's historic $1.4 billion child care spending package, which the Michigan legislature just approved last week. So this will help in creating more affordable child care, more access to child care for working women. But today, what we're going to really focus on is the hours between the end of a kid's school day and the time when moms have their end of their workday. And that's kind of the no man's land because we still need care for the children at that point. But oftentimes there's a gap and we're going to talk about how we can fill that gap and help that area for working moms. Because as we all know, work doesn't often stop at 3 o'clock when the kids are getting out of school. And so we know that we need more high quality, affordable after school programs, which are available, but we do need more. And we also need to help moms access these and help find good quality childcare. So today in the next hour, we're going to explore a little bit more about these community-based after-school programs and why they really are a wonderful resource for our children to provide valuable connections for them. How we as working mothers can get over the quote unquote mommy guilt by taking advantage of some of these opportunities. And then how as moms, we can be a force for advocacy and how we can work with policymakers to fund and create more out of school time opportunities for Michigan families. So we're going to start right off, and we're going to start by taking a look at more in depth of this problem. So I'm going to reintroduce Danielle Atkinson. And as I said before, Commissioner Atkinson is with the Michigan Women's Commission, and she's a founding director of Mothering Justice and Mothering Justice Action. So Danielle, take it away. I think you're on mute still. Shannon, can you unmute Commissioner Atkinson, please? She can't unmute herself.
Thank you. I was like, I'm trapped. Hello, everyone. Again, thank you. Sabala, my name is Danielle Atkinson, founding director of Mothering Justice. We work on issues of financial stability for mothers and leadership development for mothers of color in the state of Michigan. And so proud to be on the Women's Commission as well. So this issue, I wanted to start by, first of all, a story. I have children ranging from 13 to 3. There's 6 of them. So this is very much an issue that my family deals with on a daily basis. My friend and I were trying to figure out care for our kids, factoring in COVID, factoring in, wanting to keep them out of in-person school for a little bit. And we just couldn't figure it out. It was like the most difficult algebra problem ever, right? And, my friend would just texted me and said, I just don't understand why it's so hard. Why is it so hard? And we know that it's hard by design, right? Because when we were building these societies and these workforces, we weren't thinking about a working mom. We weren't thinking about mothers of color. We weren't thinking about people who were working non-conventional hours. And I do want to name that as well, because we are having a conversation really thinking about women in particular and the conventional hours in which they work. And we have to bring the scope back to all caregivers and people that are working low paying jobs that do not start at 9 or end at 5. Also want to, give homage to my mother who worked 2 jobs. My father worked a factory job, and in a 2-parent household, they had to do that morning shift, right? So morning shift of a person. So I'd have to wake up about 2 hours early for school, get dressed in my uniform to make sure that I got everything for my, good Catholic schoolgirl. And then I would go to my godmother's house. I would then put my pajamas back on and sleep for another hour until my father got off, and he would bring me to school. And that is the case for a lot of us. And unfortunately, those systems are also deteriorating, right? Like those very chaotic situations, they're also going away with the need for people to work more hours. And it creates a lot of stress on a child, caregivers, parents, and a society as a whole. Nearly 40 million children between the ages of 5 and 14 in the United States experience a need for out of school care. And like I said before, and we're all well aware, this consists of before care, after care, summer care, and holidays. Contributing factors are that 75% of mothers of school-age children are employed, and 2/3 of them work full-time. And I don't know where the study is, but we really talked about the growth and the expansion of women as breadwinners. Again, in communities of color, this has always been the case, but it is now making headlines with our white counterparts in that boat. We know that most households depend on a woman's income. And so they are the breadwinner and they are the caregiver. This is extremely stressful. Public school meets 6 hours per day, 180 days a year. And the gap between parents and children's schedule may be 1,000 hours per year that you have to think about it. I ask any mom and dads as well and other caregivers that 3 to 5, when somebody calls for a meeting or you have to do something extra, and the stress around whether or not you're going to be able to make it meet. Actually, even prior to this meeting, I got stuck with pickup, which meant I had to be there at 3:30, hope kids walk fast, hope there's no meetings with teachers outside of the school door so that I can get back in front of my computer for a 3:45 phone call. And again, I've got it on the easy end, I believe. We know that out of school care is beneficial for an entire society. It benefits a child because this is their leisure time when they're able to be out of school, make those bonds, learn new skills. They're able to be physically and emotionally stimulated. For a parent, the stress reliever of knowing that your children are in safe care. Again, I have a 13-year-old, and so we just started leaving our 13 and 12-year-old alone. And I couldn't imagine if I had to be working, maybe away from my phone, and not know if a child who is newly on their own is able to meet their needs, or anything is happening. That there's a well-being and a state of mind. And then also as a society, right? This should be a societal priority. I was able to find a lot of research around crime rates and all of those things around after school activities, but I really want us to focus on what it means for a community, a society, to know that the children are cared for, to walk past, drive past, or live near to an after school or before school program where you know that a child's needs are being met. That forms a community. So I'm really excited to be a part of this conversation. And with that, I'm going to hand it off to Lily.
So thank you, Danielle. You had a lot of great points, and I just want to reiterate some of them because I think it really speaks to how big this problem is and how we really need to solve it, for not only for individual families, but for the greater good of society. One of the things you mentioned was that there's that gap of 1,000 hours per year. That's a huge amount of time that, that we need to find a safe space for kids. And if mothers and fathers, as you said, can't feel comfortable that their kids are in a safe space and that they are okay, how do they do well at work? How do they do well, doing anything else? So, we're not really helping ourselves when, half your workforce has their mind on, is my child safe or not? And, when can I go get him or her? So I think that is a great point that you brought up. And while we are concentrating on the after school care, you did mention the summer care and the before school care, and all of that, plays into the same kind of problem that we need to solve for our working moms. So thank you. So now we're going to talk about the mental health implications, as Danielle briefly touched on. Not only for the working moms who are stressed about finding a place for their kids, but also for the kids themselves. So I'd like to reintroduce Lily Glow. She is a graduate student in clinical psychology at Michigan State University.
Thank you so much. I'm going to be speaking from a little bit more of a professional role. So in my work as a graduate student, I work with children and families in a therapy capacity. And then I also am a researcher, and I research child anxiety and anxiety in young adult women. So kind of hitting on both of the mental health aspects that we're going to talk about today a little bit. So I see for both kids and for working moms that really this is an issue of high and often unrealistic expectation. And what happens when we're put in a place, as Danielle described, of unrealistic expectation is a lot of stress and anxiety for both the parent and for the child. So focusing on mothers a little bit to start, I heard a lot of words like stress and anxiety already used in our discussion. When we are in a state of anxiety, both before even the 3 to 5 time, when we're trying to figure out and arrange what is going to happen during those times, but also during that time as unexpected things come up, it makes it harder for us to focus and do the many things that we're trying to do. So that's one of the things that anxiety does, is it makes an additional demand on top of all the demands that you're already trying to manage around your work, around childcare. It adds sort of an additional layer and makes it more difficult for us to focus, to stay engaged, because we often have maybe thoughts running through our head about what needs to happen next, or trying to problem solve in the moment, even when things don't go as expected. And so I see anxiety as a huge part of that. I'm a little biased because that's what I research, but I definitely see anxiety as one of the core things that come out of this. Over time, that can lead to a sense of burnout, feeling like we don't have the resources to give more or to put in more, but we're in the situation where we have to continue working, and parents have to continue taking care of their kids. And so it can lead to feeling exhausted, feeling tired, feeling like we can't replenish ourselves. Additionally, I think it's been mentioned too, the guilt around where our kids are and what they're doing, and that we need to be doing better. I think that speaking to the societal sort of demands that are placed, there is a huge expectation that's sometimes unspoken but ever present, that we are striving to be perfect parents, that we need to be doing everything we can be for our kids. And while that's like a wonderful thing to be trying to do, we have a lot of other goals we're trying to, balance in our daily lives. And that's going to look different day to day, what's achievable as a parent based on, what we have available to us and, what other demands we have going on. So I think the guilt around that is also pretty palpable. For kids, speaking on that, and I also see this as an issue of expectation, where we often are just as a result of, what we have available during these 3 to 5 hours, putting kids in a situation either where they do have that inconsistent schedule. I really appreciated that example of, a personal example of being shuffled around. That might look different from day to day, even for kids, depending on who is available to provide the childcare, what the work schedule looks like for that day. And we know that's happening because there aren't alternatives. We know for kids that puts them in a situation where they might not know what to expect from day to day. That can be very stressful for kids as well. Lack of supervision was mentioned. Ideally there's some sort of supervision going on, but it might not be what you're hoping for. And certainly if something unexpected happens, that could become a safety concern. And so kids may be put into situations where they're just not quite ready to be taking care of themselves in the way that, the situation is demanding that they take care of themselves. And then I think, thinking about during the pandemic, so many moms, not all moms, certainly working from home and having kids, in the background, or maybe they're, in a different room of your house while you're trying to work. that sets a high expectation for the kids that they need to be on their best behavior. And 2 hours is kind of a long time, especially for little kids to be on their best behavior, as I'm sure many of you on the call have experienced. So it sets up almost a situation where they're probably going to fail if you're trying to, put them in a place where they need to be, quiet and entertained and out of your way for 2 hours. And I say that not from the place that moms are putting that position, it's because there aren't alternatives, right? And so for kids that, can affect self-esteem around, wanting to do well, but not being able to meet that goal that's being set for them. In addition to the health and safety concerns that I mentioned earlier and coping with differences in schedules. So I definitely see like expectation as a huge thing here, both on a societal level and just based on the demands that every individual working mom and family have going.
Thank you, Lily. That was sad and eye-opening. What I really took to heart was that unrealistic expectations, because I think as a society, we have done that for years and years for women. And, there's this notion that women are superheroes and super moms. And then, that kind of perpetuates the notion that we have to do everything. And that takes a toll. And of course, the pandemic only exacerbated that. And like you said, for the children, again, it's unrealistic expectations on what we're expecting from them. And then I think we are now having this whole generation of kids who think they're failing even before they've tried anything through no fault of their own. And I think that really, it's a detriment to everyone and to society as a whole. So it's definitely something to think about and work towards changing. So we're going to segue into how we can do that, what options there are available for working moms to be able to have, affordable and accessible childcare and what the opportunities are. So I would like to introduce Erin Skeen-Pratt. She's the Executive Director at Michigan Afterschool Partnership. And then she's going to go into some of the opportunities that are available right now.
Yeah, thanks so much, Sabal. I really appreciate it. And Danielle and Lily, loved your comments. And Lily really rang true to me in terms of the I have a 5-year-old as well as a 6th grader. And the 5-year-old is in the room next to me. And I'm thinking, please don't come in. Please don't come in, with my husband out there. And then the 6th grader is, he's at that challenging age, right, Danielle? It's that 12 of, can you stay on your own? Can you not stay on your own? We're really grappling with all of these. And I do come from a lucky position from, that I have family in the area, we have resources. But let me just get down to business. So a little bit of background on the Michigan Afterschool Partnership, or MASP as we call it. MASP is actually a statewide network of out of school time programs that include before school, after school, and summer programs. Our network is united around the desire to see that all children and youth, so that's kindergarten through 12th grade, have access to quality and equitable out of school time programs. You may have these programs in your communities, whether it's before school, after school, or summer. It could be located at your school. It could be at the YMCA. It could be at the Boys and Girls Club, 4-H, Parks and Rec Department, library, or other community-based organizations. As a mom myself, I know that there are many benefits to these after-school programs, particularly those that are offered by community-based organizations. First, as our presenters before me have mentioned, after-school programs really do provide a safe place and supervision from trained adults. There's a huge childcare gap, right, for after school, and when kids are out of school, which is actually 80% of the time. And school ends at 2 or 3 and parents work until 5 or 6. And I know that we tend to think of after school programs as just for elementary kids. However, middle school and high school students also benefit greatly from having these programs as well. Second, after-school programs create a sense of belonging. Youth often make new friends and form connections to caring adults who can serve as mentors in their lives. Kids in these programs are more likely to feel included and feel like they're part of a group. Third, after-school programs enhance kids' social skills and emotional support. Programs promote cooperation, support, and respect. We all know that after a year of virtual school, especially in my household, additional help for social skills is very much needed. Fourth, after-school programs provide academic support. We know that youth who participate in these programs often see an improvement in their math and reading scores. Fifth, after-school programs make learning fun. Whether it's STEM activities, science, or computers, we are not school. We're a complement to school. These programs provide hands-on learning, which really does complement what they're doing in the schools. Finally, these programs often provide such needed support for families, whether it's connections to critical programs or services, or frankly, just a sense of belonging, not only just for the kids, but also for the adults and for the moms themselves. Even with the school year underway, I know that many families, including my own, are really grappling with what to do with our kids in the afternoon. Actually, with a kindergartner and a middle schooler at home, it's not just 3 to 5 for me. My son gets done at 2. So it's really 2 to 5. I see Danielle, shaking her head. One resource, however, that I did want to point people to for out of school time programs, particularly after school programs that you might want to be able to find in your neighborhood, is for you to call 211 or visit the 211 website, which is mi211.org. And they are providing a list of after school, before school, and summer programs by their region. So you can actually find the programs that are in your area. And we're helping 211 to cultivate that list as well. Having said that you should contact 211, I have to say that we've located about 4,500 out of school time programs. So again, the before, after, summer. And it might seem like a lot, but it's really not when you consider that there's more than 1 million K-12 students in the state. So that's a lot who aren't being served. There are so many benefits to these quality programs, and yet there are so many youth in the state who don't have access, and a lot of moms who don't have care during this critical time of day. Just to be clear, this is a statewide issue, whether families live in rural or whether they live in urban areas. All families need to have access to affordable, if not free of cost, quality after school programs. In Michigan, unmet demand, Danielle touched on this a little bit from a national perspective. But in Michigan, unmet demand for after-school programs has actually reached an all-time high, with more than 751,000 children who would be enrolled in a program if one were available to them. So that means for every one child in an after-school program, there are 4 more who are waiting to get in. Demand we've seen is continuing to grow as parents are seeing the key benefits of these programs, obviously, is keeping kids safe, helping them learn and grow, and providing a peace of mind for working families. In fact, we're even seeing that parent satisfaction in after-school programs is at a high of 98%. But families are facing barriers to participation, such as cost and accessibility. And as they're facing this, we are finding, and I know I'm not going to get into my advocacy pitch yet, Shannon, I promise, but we are seeing that there is strong support for public funding for after-school programs. We have it in there are a number of states that have it. Michigan has been a little bit behind in that, but we have seen that about 86% of parents overwhelmingly support public funding for after-school. So with that, I'll hand it back to you, Sabala.
Thank you, Erin. That was a lot of good information. And I just want to reiterate mi211.org. And Shannon, if you want to put it on the chat, because that is a good website for people to have as a resource, it sounds like. So, but unfortunately, as Erin said, there are not enough resources out there for all of the kids and all of the working moms that need this kind of after school childcare. And I know, several of us here are, working moms with various ages children. Danielle's kids, she had mentioned, wide range from 13 on down. Erin, you have a middle schooler and a kindergartner. My youngest just went to college, so right now I'm an empty nester, but I lived the same things. And I agree with both you and Danielle. When I was a resident and a trainee, and my husband was also, that was 2 o'clock was when I would start sweating bullets, because I knew that one of us would have to leave work in time to go pick up our son from, daycare. And, if we didn't get there, they're going to close, or they're going to charge us an exorbitant amount of money. And, it was always a juggling act day to day on who would be able to leave, work on time. And so and I remember that the last 2 hours, half my mind would be on that, and half my mind would be on my work. So both suffered to me, because, I couldn't fully concentrate on work, and I fully couldn't concentrate on my child. And like both of you, I am extremely fortunate. We did have family in town. So we did have, in an emergency, in a true emergency, we did have somebody who could go and pitch in, but it was still every day was a stressor on how we would be able to go and get our children, from daycare. So, I think for women who have no family support or other support that they can lean on, that's a huge problem. And it's a problem that we really have to address. So I'd just like to have, just ask a few questions. This one's for Danielle, but certainly, please, anybody can chime in. Can we talk more specifically about the out of school time needs for women of color and how that impacts them?
Yeah. So women of color make up a disproportionate amount of the low income employed individuals in our state. So all the things that go along with being low income, having, your children are probably enrolled in a school that is not adequate, is lacking resources. So there's a need there to be able to go somewhere. You're probably working more than 8 hours a day. So again, you need a place for your child to go. You're going to need transportation, right? So there's also this you're not really helping this work-life balance issue if you have to take off from work to drive your child to the. So we need to talk about transportation as well. And women of color are the canary in the coal mine for society. Again, we have all these issues that we present to the world, and then shortly after, the rest of the world realizes that their issues are touching their lives as well. And then also in Michigan, and I'm sure Erin can speak more to this. This is just kind of a guess, but it's adequate and it's accurate in every other instance, that rural areas mimic the problems and the concerns that urban communities do as well. So we often are spotlighting urban situations and people of color, which I'm okay with because that's the work I do. But just to know that it's not a problem only in urban communities. This is a problem for everyone. And then when we speak about the overwhelming support that Erin spoke about for funds for after school programs, we really need to have a greater conversation about the priorities in our country and why something that is so overwhelmingly needed and popular is not on the top of the priority for our elected officials.
I agree. I'm going to be a little cynical and say maybe it's, because children can't vote, but it has to be done because, it seems in the short term or the short vision view, it looks like, oh, we're just putting money that is not going to, have a return on investment. But when in reality, the return on investment is huge, because oftentimes working moms, they want to do a good job. They want to be productive members of society, but are hampered by something that I think should be just something that gets done. That we should have, we shouldn't even have to be having this conversation, that we should just, as a matter of course, have affordable childcare so that our working moms can be, real productive members of society. And, unfortunately, we're not there yet. But I hope that, we're making at least some steps towards it. The other thing I did I'm glad you pointed out was that most people think that it tends to be an urban problem, and that rural communities don't have that this issues. But as you very cogently pointed out, that this is an issue across the board, rural and urban.
Yeah, and just one more point, and I will not talk because there's so much brilliance on this call. The fact that, we need to think about out of school care the same way we think about public schools. Unfortunately, we think about it as an economic issue, that this is what will allow women to work, or it will allow children to have a better start. Public school, where we believe that that is the institution that we fund as taxpayers, and we regulate as community members and citizens, where our children go and learn. I don't have to prove that I'm at work or take a means test for there to be an institution of education for my children. We, as a society, have decided that it is important to have that institution and to stabilize it, right? And childcare is in a spot where it's not stabilized because it is so contingent on resources from parents and a need. And a need scenario. Again, other people can put better words to it than I can, but if we as a society change our mind about what out of school care is to our society, we will invest as such.
That's an excellent point. Thank you. So moving on, then I'd like to ask Lily again to weigh in. We had mentioned early on about mommy guilt, and that has been there again for forever. And the pandemic has only heightened that for many women. So I just want to ask you, how do women combat that? What are some resources or techniques or whatever you may want to phrase it as, to be able to get past that for their mental health?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And I definitely agree that the pandemic, I think, has only increased this for women, especially when, I want to acknowledge that women are being put in, and parents in general are being put in situations of the balancing safety and then balancing our own demands. It's an impossible situation, right? There's no right answer to that. There's only what, you can move forward with and feel good about. When I give advice like this around coping with guilt, I always like to say that different things work for different people. So some things I suggest may not work well for all moms, and probably won't, because it's really hard to give a blanket strategy that just works for everybody. But I do have some suggestions on things that you can try. So going back to this idea that, we're in these situations where expectations are extremely high and often unrealistically high. I think about, how do you reframe your goals for a given day on what you want to do, both in terms of work. Sometimes those are very non-flexible or inflexible goals that you have for work, where you have to do certain work in your day, and that just depends on your job, but also with parenting and taking it one day at a time. So for example, some people's schedules look very different on different days of the week. And so you might have more capacity, time, and space to devote to your kids on different days of the week. So for example, there might be some days where you get 15 minutes in with your kid. It might even be in the car on your way somewhere, where you're really focusing on what's going on for them. And some days that is good enough. And I think us letting yourself have that permission to not be that super mom, like was mentioned earlier, giving yourself permission to have days where it just isn't feasible to fit into the schedule, and saying that's okay for now, because there are these factors that are outside of our control, as we're talking about, that make it so that some days there's just less time. And also spending 15 minutes really focusing on your kid is great for them. That is enough. And so I think giving ourselves permission to have days that are not going to go perfect and are not going to go to plan would be my first one, and taking it one day at a time. So it's really hard if we're thinking about, I want to be like a parent in X way. It's good to have those values, but if we're not able to reach that every day, we shouldn't be feeling super guilty because we are all juggling so many demands. So that would be my first thing. My other thing would be, I talk with families a lot that I work with, and parents a lot that I work with about making time for your own self-care when you can. That is going to only benefit your kids if you can take, even if it's, again, 10-15 minutes is enough. Whether that be when you're in the car and maybe you have a minute alone in the car by yourself just to really process the day, whether that be to, engage in, we know some strategies like mindfulness meditation can be helpful, trying again to focus just one day at a time, focus on what's going on in that present moment. So let's say you have 10 minutes of peace, which is followed by many hours of childcare and balancing that with work. At least you have those 10 minutes. So focusing on those 10 minutes while you have them, as opposed to anticipating what's about to come next. And then also things like, we know that expressive writing can be helpful for combating stress and anxiety. So taking a second and just jotting down the thoughts that are rushing through your head, sometimes just getting them out on paper, even if you never read it again, is actually a helpful way just to get the thoughts out so that you have more space to focus on what's going on. And then finally, I think, even if it is 10-15 minutes a day, taking a look at your schedule and having an intentional time that you're going to spend with one or multiple of your kids, so that you know that that's in your schedule for later in the day, so that when things are really crazy, maybe from 3 to 5, and things are not going as planned, and you're having to say, no, I really need to focus on work right now, you and your child both know that you have a time coming up. Maybe it's right before bed, maybe it's in the morning before they go to school, if you have a couple minutes then, that's just going to be about you all. So those would be kind of my fast ones that I could go through here, with the acknowledgement that some of those might work better for different circumstances than others.
No, I think that was great. I love all the tips and messages that you sent, particularly the one about giving yourself permission to just not be a super mom. And I think oftentimes we are hardest on ourselves, but really spend the time, the quality time with your kids. And so I think that's very helpful. There was a comment on the chat that said, I spoke to a mom yesterday, works 3 10-hour days a week, and she spends $25,000 per year on childcare, which, clearly is not sustainable. So I just wanted to ask Erin, what the average cost for after school and summer programs are. What is a range that parents can be expected to pay? I know we would all prefer that they are funded, but since right now they are not, what's kind of a range?
Honestly, there are programs that are of no cost. There are programs that operate on a sliding scale based on need. And then there are programs that, can charge up to $250 a week. And that's for, 2 hours, 3 hours, I should say, after school. A lot of times those might be the school-based, programs that are operating out of the school district. So it really does vary. And I want to mention, if I can, Sabala, Kim put in the chat box about how she oversees an out-of-school time program. And she's absolutely right that the funding she gets doesn't cover everything. And that there are huge costs associated with doing these programs. And it's not only an issue of us starting new programs, of us expanding existing programs. It's also a matter of us making sure that the programs that we have in existence are paid appropriately, frankly, and have the resources that they need. We are really seeing an issue with staffing in the field right now. And it's difficult because a lot of these programs, right? And Kim, I'm not sure which one you're with, but a lot of them may just have part-time staff, right? Not just, but have a lot of part-time staff, right? That might operate after school for a few hours. And, they can't compete when Culver's is paying $17 an hour. These programs can't compete when they're paying $10, $12 an hour, right? And it sounds it's really sad that we're in that situation, but we really are having a situation where it is difficult for these programs to cover staffing. So we have to be able to pay them more than what we are currently paying them.
I agree. I mean, it's similar to, you know, teachers, anything concerning children tends to be underfunded and underpaid, unfortunately. And I think that is, you know, that's kind of like the broader topic that needs to change, you know, as a result. So to segue from that, I'm going to ask you, you know, how moms can collectively or individually, you know, work to for advocacy, or, you know, work to talk to their legislatures. What can they do to kind of move the conversation forward?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've had a little bit of luck with our state legislature, and we got some of the COVID dollars, and that was able to go into a competitive grant process for programs, existing programs that helped summer learning this past summer for community-based organizations. And then the legislature and the governor just agreed to another $5 million that will go again to community-based organizations for this time, though, for before and after. So we're having a little bit of luck, but we've identified the need that what we really need actually is about $50 million in annual funding to be able to really provide the adequate funding to be able to have quality programs and make sure that all youth have access to it. And, you know, I will say, I say 50, right? And that probably seems like a lot, right? But frankly, I have friends at in other organizations will actually say that the need is closer to 100 million. But we know that 50 million a year will start getting us to that point. And we need it so that we can start new programs in areas that we have deserts. Frankly, it's even an issue of areas where we have programs, but we don't have enough programs, right? And then we also need to look at expanding the number of students in existing programs, right? Being able to do that. Again, making sure that our programs have the resources and the funding that they need so that they can hire and keep and retain staff. And then we have to make sure that we're providing these folks with the professional development and capacity building that they really need. So you know, that's what we want for the larger amount, right? And but we need help, honestly. So it's wonderful for the legislature and the administration to hear from you know, providers and staff of out of school time. They definitely are appreciative of that. But hearing from moms, hearing from parents in their district is such a stronger message. And even frankly, hearing from your kids, honestly, that's huge, the youth voice. And so we really need your help. And I'm hoping Shannon or I can put it in there after, but our website is miafterschool.org. And we have talking points up there. We have the ability to connect with your legislators through there. And it really is about, you know, if your kid is in an after school program, particularly a community-based organization program, because that's what we're really pursuing versus the school-based. But the community-based organization program, if they're in one of those, talking about the benefits of that, right? Why it's helpful for you, why it's helpful for your family and your kiddo. But then also, if you don't have that, right? Talking about why it's needed, why you need to make sure that we're able to do that. So again, really appreciate because those local individual stories really do go so much further than frankly the lobbyist and the others do as well.
Although as a lobbyist, you are a working mom, so you do have the same stories, which definitely makes it personal. But I know what you mean. You know, putting a face to actual people, to, you know, people in our community who are living this struggle every day. I think that definitely makes a bigger impact and puts the situation into perspective for our lawmakers, which I think is very important to see what the struggle is. So I just want to open it up to any of our participants that are online with us. If there are any questions that you may have that we haven't covered, that any of these very strong women who are advocating for our children and for working moms can answer for you. So if there's anything, now's the time to put it in the chat. And I know there have been people who have put great comments in the chat that we have kind of talked about a little bit. So I don't see anything right now. Oh, there is something. How many years in a row can a person get government funding who are low income?
Is it, or for childcare? Danielle, is there, I don't know with the new 1.4 billion.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know the numbers yet.
So more to come on that. Hopefully,
Yeah.
hopefully we will know more since the package has just been approved.
Yeah.
We will get more details as we move down the line. Any other questions right now? Otherwise, I'm going to ask our panelists if they have any last minute thoughts that they want to put out there, any resources that they'd like to talk about.
Yeah, I think it's really important to contact your elected officials, your Congress members, your senators, and then your state legislature about this. And right now would be a really great time as, federally they are debating a huge reconciliation package, which would be really meaningful for this field. And they need to hear from you because there's a lot of talking heads and they're talking about the cost of the package. And I think we need to talk about what the cost is if it doesn't get passed, right? And that cost being well-being for ourselves, our children, and our community.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and if I could just add on to that and, absolutely echo that. And thank you so much to all of you for having me here and for having this discussion about out of school time. I can't tell you how important this is. There really has been a focus on early childhood, maybe the last 15, 20 years, which is great, right? And there needs to be a focus on early childhood. But in this whole childcare umbrella, we can't forget the school age as well, right? And making sure that they have safe places, but not just safe places, but that they have the ability to learn and grow in those, right? Because we know schools cannot do everything on their own, right? And we know that, like I said earlier, kids spend 80% of their time not in school. So, there's such an opportunity to be, have more of these programs and have youth engaged in it. So again, just really appreciate this conversation and please feel free to check out our website. Julie, I just saw, today in the package they're voting on again, so we know exactly what we're asking our lawmakers to support. Absolutely. So if you go to our website, and it's not a particular proposal right now, but the legislature is the Michigan legislature is about to discuss what they're going to do and decide what they're going to do with all of the federal COVID dollars that they've received. And so that's where we are pushing for the larger amount from that. So more of that is on the website. So again, it's not a particular proposal, but it is helpful, honestly, and you don't have to get into any specifics, but just saying that, you really support state as well as federal funding for community-based out-of-school time programs and why.
Perfect. Thank you, Erin. Lily, any last thoughts? No.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. It was great to hear you all talk, and I feel like I learned a lot as well. So.
Perfect. So I just want to thank again our fabulous panelists, Danielle Atkinson, Erin Skeen-Pratt, and Lily Glow. Thank you very much for being here this hour, shining the spotlight on this issue that is truly something that we need to move forward and work on for our working mothers, our families, our children. And thank you to all the people who are on this call. And hopefully you were able to get some more information and some answers. And as Shannon said, this will be recorded so that if you want to go back and listen to the myriad amount of resources that all three of these fabulous women have given us today, you can certainly do that. So thank you again, everyone, for joining us this evening. Have a good night.